There is a very specific, almost universal kind of anxiety that you only ever really experience in modern healthcare.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It usually starts right there in the waiting room. You're sitting under those buzzing fluorescent lights, holding that cheap plastic clipboard.
Yep. Filling out the exact same medical history paperwork for the 5th time this year.
Exactly. But the real headache, the true, deeply modern anxiety, it hits about 3 to 6 months later.
When the mail arrives.
Right. When you open your mail and you find a medical bill, and it is completely incomprehensible.
It looks like it's written in a different language.
It really does.
Yeah.
There are these seemingly random codes, bizarre line item adjustments, and these opaque provider network discounts.
And somehow, after doing all that math, you owe an amount that feels entirely arbitrary.
Completely arbitrary. It is confusing, it is overwhelming, and frankly, it just makes you feel entirely powerless in a system that is supposed to be taking care of you.
Well, it makes sense that you feel that way because you are navigating an ecosystem that is fundamentally, perhaps even intentionally, opaque.
Intentionally opaque. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, because you are technically the consumer in this transaction, right?
Right.
But you have absolutely no idea what the actual price of the service is until long after you have received it.
Which is wild when you think about any other industry.
Exactly. By the time that bill arrives, you have zero leverage. I mean, you cannot return the service.
Right. You can't untake the pill or unhave the surgery.
You cannot negotiate the rate after the fact. You were just trapped in this financial black box.
And that feeling of powerlessness, that structural opacity we're talking about, is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive.
It's going to be a big one.
Today, we are looking at an incredibly dense, highly visionary, and honestly pretty provocative source.
Very provocative.
It is a piece of writing dated June 13th, 2026. The title is Barakface, Can Single Payer Be Made to Work? And it is written by an author named Paramendra.
And Paramendra's background is actually vital context for how we're going to navigate this text today.
Yeah, he has a really fascinating trajectory.
He does. He was actually Barack Obama's first full-time volunteer in New York City.
Wow, okay.
So he has these very deep roots in grassroots political organizing. But today, he is a prolific author of highly conceptual futurist books.
Like systems-level thinking stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking about titles mentioned in the source material, like The Speed Builders, 1,000 Slaras in 10 years,
Yeah.
and Physical AWS.
Right, so he is someone who thinks entirely in terms of mega projects. He does not just look at a leaky pipe in a house and suggest patching it with duct tape, right?
No, not at all.
He looks at the pipe, questions the entire plumbing architecture of the city, and then proposes a new way to route the water entirely.
That's a perfect way to put it. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack how he applies that exact mega project mindset to the United States healthcare system.
It's a massive undertaking.
It really is. He is proposing a radical architectural re-engineering of human health. He essentially takes the bottom-up capitalist disruptions championed by billionaires like Mark Cuban.
Right, the whole cost plus drugs thing.
Exactly. And he attempts to fuse those capitalist disruptions with a highly structured, single-payer philosophy.
Now, before we get into the blueprints of this massive thought experiment, we really should set some ground rules for you listening.
Definitely.
Because the author's ideas are highly provocative and fiercely political. I mean, he is touching the third rail of American policy here.
Oh, absolutely. Single-payer healthcare, taxation, heavy corporate regulation.
The role of the government in our daily lives, it's a lot. So regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, our goal today is just to pressure test the underlying mechanics of his blueprint.
We're totally impartial guides here.
Right. We are not endorsing his viewpoints, nor are we condemning them. We just want to see if his math actually adds up and how these structural changes would theoretically play out in your daily life.
It is a national-scale thought experiment. We are just examining the blueprints to see if the building stands up.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the author actually starts this grand vision by doing something you might not expect in an essay about single-payer healthcare.
Yeah, he enthusiastically agrees with a billionaire capitalist.
Right. He looks at Mark Cuban's diagnosis of the U.S. healthcare system and says, yes, exactly, he nailed it.
And Cuban's diagnosis is that the system is broken, not because of the doctors or the medicine itself.
No, the medicine is great.
It is broken because of a labyrinth of vertically integrated conglomerates. It is broken because of opaque middlemen.
And specifically, the text highlights entities like pharmacy benefit managers or PBMs.
Right, the PBMs. These are the classic invisible middlemen who sit between the drug manufacturer, the retail pharmacy, and your insurance company.
And they didn't start out as the bad guys, did they?
No, they originally existed to just process claims and negotiate bulk discounts.
Hmm.
But over time, they have morphed into these massive, vertically integrated behemoths.
Let me try to make this PBM concept a bit more tangible for you because it is notoriously complex to wrap your head around.
It's a nightmare.
Imagine you are just trying to buy groceries. You just want an apple. So you walk into the grocery store, but before you can even reach the produce section, you have to pass through a toll booth run by a cart benefit manager.
A cart benefit manager. I love this.
Right. And you pay them a fee just to use the shopping cart. Then you get to the actual aisle, and there is an aisle access conglomerate standing there.
Naturally.
You pay them a fee for the right to look at the fruit. So you finally pick up the apple, but there is no price tag on it.
Of course not. That would be too easy.
You take it home, you eat it, and 3 months later, the grocery store, the cart manager, and the aisle conglomerate all send you separate bills for that one single apple.
And you have no idea how they got those numbers.
Exactly. If you ask them how they calculated the cost, they just tell you it is a proprietary trade secret.
That is a terrifyingly accurate analogy for the medical billing ecosystem right now.
It's absurd when you map it onto groceries.
It really is. In the pharmacy world, this plays out through mechanisms like spread pricing.
Spread pricing. Break that down for me.
So the PBM tells your insurance company that the apple or the pill costs $50.
Okay, $50.
But they tell the pharmacy they will only reimburse them $20 for dispensing it.
Wait, so where does the other $30 go?
The PBM just pockets that $30 spread in the middle.
Wow. Just pure profit for sitting in the middle.
Exactly. The author points out that these hidden pricing structures are designed for one thing only: maximizing corporate margins, not maximizing patient health.
And Mark Cuban's proposed solution to this grocery store nightmare is something he is actively doing right now.
With his cost-plus drugs company, yeah.
He champions direct contracting and radical transparency. He basically says, skip the toll booths entirely.
Go straight to the source.
Right. Go straight to the apple farmer, ask them exactly what it costs to grow the apple, at a flat, transparent profit margin, like maybe 15%, and buy it directly.
It is a purely bottom-up, market-driven disruption.
Capitalism at its finest.
Exactly. In Cuban's view, if you introduce radical transparency, the market naturally corrects itself. Consumers are smart.
Right, if you give them the information.
Right. If they see one pharmacy charging $200 for a generic drug and Cuban's pharmacy charging $14 with a totally transparent markup, they will obviously choose the fair price.
Which effectively starves the opaque conglomerates of their margins.
Because the consumer simply walks right around them.
Okay, that sounds fantastic when we are talking about generic daily medications. But this is where I have to push back a little bit.
Now let's hear it.
And this is a critical question drawn directly from the author's own text. Cuban's solution relies entirely on the premise that you and I, as patients, can act like rational, calculating shoppers in a free market.
Which is a big assumption.
A huge assumption. Do we actually have the luxury of choice or clear information during a medical emergency?
Usually not.
Right. If I am in the back of an ambulance having a heart attack, I am not pulling out my phone to comparison shop for the most cost-effective arterial stent.
No, you're definitely not opening a new browser tab in the ambulance.
I am not checking which local emergency room offers the best transparent direct contracting rates. I am bleeding. I just want to survive.
Exactly. The basic laws of supply and demand kind of break down when the demand is literally save my life right now.
And you have just hit on the exact pivot point of the entire essay.
That precise flaw in bottom-up capitalism during a health crisis.
Right. The grim reality that a bleeding patient has absolute zero market leverage. And that is what leads the author to a massive, unexpected intellectual leap.
He takes Mark Cuban's logic. He agrees entirely with the goal of transparency and cutting out middlemen.
Yes.
But then he uses that exact capitalist logic to justify a single-payer system.
It is a wild pivot. I mean, he is basically saying Mark Cuban is totally right about the disease, and he is right about the cure transparency and direct contracting.
But he is entirely wrong about who should be administering the medicine.
That is the core argument here. The author argues that if the ultimate goal is eliminating administrative bloat and crushing artificial complexity,
And ending the fragmentation of our purchasing power.
yes, then a beautifully designed national single-payer architecture is actually the most efficient vehicle to achieve Mark Cuban's exact goals.
He calls it the ultimate direct contracting.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of that phrase, ultimate direct contracting. Because usually when people talk about single-payer healthcare in political debates, they just think it means the government pays the bill instead of Aetna or Blue Cross.
Right, they view it as just changing the logo on the check.
Exactly. But the author is saying it is not about the logo, it is about market leverage.
It is entirely about leverage.
Okay.
Let's look at the status quo. Under the current U.S. system, you have millions of individual consumers, thousands of individual employers, and dozens of different insurance companies.
All scat.
Yes, and they are all trying to negotiate direct contracts independently with giant hospital networks and pharma monopolies.
They are completely fractured. They are isolated. And therefore, they are weak.
Weak leverage. But what happens if you take 340 million fractured U.S. consumers and fuse them into a single, cohesive, unstoppable purchasing block?
You become the biggest single customer on planet Earth.
Exactly. You become a monopsony.
A monopsony.
Right. A market situation where there's only one buyer. And when you are the biggest and frankly only customer on Earth for healthcare services, you do not politely ask for radical transparency.
No, you dictate it.
You dictate it. You wield the collective purchasing power of an entire nation to enforce Cuban's transparent model.
So the conglomerates cannot hide their margins anymore.
And the PBMs cannot utilize spread pricing because the single payer simply refuses to sign contracts that include opaque middleman services.
Period.
If a hospital wants to treat American patients, they have to open their books and accept transparent cost-plus reimbursement.
Which starves the administrative bloat at the source because the money spigot is controlled by one single hand.
Exactly.
So he is basically using the ultimate form of collective bargaining to force the free market to behave transparently.
That's a great summary.
But the text is very careful to make a distinction right here. The author insists that this cannot just be a simple insurance swap.
Right, because he argues that existing universal systems around the world often stumble precisely because of that.
They just swap the payer. The government takes over the billing, but they leave the underlying rot of the system completely intact.
They just fund the dysfunction with taxpayer dollars.
And simply throwing federal money at a broken, bloated system just makes it a broken, bloated system with a much bigger budget.
Which nobody wants.
Yeah.
So he is calling for a structural re-engineering of the human ecosystem.
He wants to pivot the entire nation away from what we have now, which he calls a sick care economy.
And build a wellness society.
Which is a profound, almost philosophical shift in perspective, but it comes with massive economic implications.
Think about how our current economy works. A sick care economy only really activates when something is broken.
Right. Hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, even doctors, they primarily generate revenue when you are ill.
It literally profits off illness.
But a wellness society, according to the text, is architected from the ground up to prevent the illness from ever occurring.
Because in a true single-payer system, illness is viewed as an economic loss for the collective system.
Okay, I want to really ground this in reality for a second. What does this structural reengineering actually mean for the average person before they even get sick?
Right. How does this look on a Tuesday?
Yeah, how does this play out in your daily life? Because to achieve this wellness society, the author introduces what he considers the foundational layer of this new world. And I have to say, it is pretty aggressive.
It is the absolute foundation upon which his entire blueprint rests. He calls it radical wellness.
Radical wellness.
The author makes a very blunt, really undeniable assertion. He says the most mathematically efficient healthcare system in the world is the one you rarely ever have to use.
Mathematically, you can't argue with that.
Right. And to achieve that reality, a nation has to fundamentally change how it views its citizens. It requires treating the human body as national infrastructure.
Treating the human body as national infrastructure, that's a wild concept, like a highway bridge or a power grid or a water treatment plant.
Exactly like that.
You do not wait for the bridge to physically collapse into the river before you send out a maintenance crew.
Because the economic fallout of a collapsed bridge,
Yeah.
the halted supply chains, the emergency rebuilding costs, it's devastating.
The author is taking that exact macroeconomic logic and applying it to human biology, to the gut microbiome, to metabolic health.
Yes. And this is where the policy proposals move from abstract economics to highly aggressive daily interventions.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, if you are legally and economically treating the human body as national infrastructure, then anything that degrades that infrastructure is effectively a threat to the nation.
Wow. It is almost a form of sabotage.
That's how he views it, which leads the author to launch an absolute war on what he terms corporate food.
corporate food. This was one of the most fascinating parallels in the text for me.
Very clever.
He explicitly compares the middlemen in the wellness space to the middlemen in the medical space.
Right. If PBMs are the toxic, profit-extracting intermediaries of medicine.
Then corporate food is the toxic intermediary of human nutrition. The text explicitly targets ultra-processed foods.
And he doesn't mince words. The author argues that these foods are not just empty calories.
No, he says they are literally engineered in laboratories to destroy the gut microbiome.
They trigger metabolic dysfunction,
Yeah.
spike insulin resistance, and essentially fuel the national obesity epidemic. They are explicitly designed to be addictive.
And under a true single-payer system, the government, meaning you and me, the taxpayer, is now entirely on the hook for the financial cost of that metabolic dysfunction.
Exactly. If you eat ultra-processed food for 30 years and develop type 2 diabetes, the single-payer system has to pay for your insulin.
Your doctor visits, your potential amputations down the line?
Precisely. Because the system absorbs the full financial risk of your illness, the system suddenly has a vested, massive financial interest in stopping you from getting sick.
It changes the whole incentive structure.
So the text suggests that these ultra-processed foods would be heavily regulated, taxed into oblivion, or even entirely banned.
Banning ultra-processed foods outright, I mean, that is a massive intervention. I'm trying to imagine the actual mechanics of that.
It would be explosive.
The single-payer healthcare apparatus would essentially have to become this lobbying powerhouse that totally overpowers the agricultural and food manufacturing lobbies.
They'd have to fight the biggest corporations in the world.
They would have to legally define what constitutes ultra-processed and literally pull it off the shelves. Sort of the same way the EPA pulls toxic chemicals out of the water supply.
It would be a monumental regulatory battle. But the author's logic is just math. You cannot fund a universal healthcare system while simultaneously allowing multinational corporations to legally poison the population for profit.
The math just does not work.
It bankrupts the system.
But his vision does not stop at just banning the bad stuff. He knows you cannot just use a stick, right? You need a carrot.
People need incentives.
So the author introduces a concept called health credit incentives. This is what he calls his doctrine of fairness.
Right, because the most common and perhaps most valid critique of universal healthcare systems is the free rider problem.
The idea that I'm paying for someone else's bad choices.
Exactly. Why should a citizen who exercises daily, eats perfectly, and takes immaculate care of their health be forced to subsidize through taxes?
Yeah.
Someone who smokes a pack a day, eats fast food, and treats their body terribly.
It feels inherently unfair to a lot of people.
It does. So the author solves this perceived unfairness with direct financial mechanics. In this system, citizens actively participate in annual mandatory wellness clinic check-ins.
And to be clear, because I read this part closely, these are not just your standard step on the scale, let me check your blood pressure and tap your knee with a little rubber hammer appointments.
No, they are intense.
The text says they are tracking incredibly deep, granular metrics, metabolic health markers, functional fitness levels, and even gut biome diversity.
And here's the kicker. If you meet your personalized, realistic benchmarks, meaning you are actively maintaining your piece of the national infrastructure, you receive health credits.
Health credits, like actual money.
Yes. These credits translate directly into significant tax rebates or actual cash payouts.
Okay, so it is kind of like getting a safe driving discount on your car insurance.
That's a really good analogy.
You agree to plug that little telematic monitor into your dashboard, right? And it proves to the insurance company that you do not slam on the brakes or speed down the highway.
And so your monthly premium drops because you are statistically less likely to cost them money in a crash.
Exactly. Here, you are essentially plugging the monitor into your metabolic health.
You're proving you're a safe driver of your own body.
But I have to push back here, because this is where a lot of readers, especially in America, would just hit the brakes hard.
The privacy concerns.
Yeah. Tracking citizens' gut biomes, measuring their functional fitness for government cash. Does this not cross a massive line into biosurveillance?
It sounds incredibly dystopian at first glance.
It sounds like the ultimate nanny state overreach. You are basically inviting the federal government into your bloodstream.
That is the natural reflex, certainly. The privacy implications are enormous. But if we synthesize the author's macroeconomic argument, he frames it entirely differently.
Okay, how does he frame it?
He argues that these cash payouts are not government handouts, and it is not a system of control. It is a system of dividends.
Dividends, like a stock payout.
Exactly like a stock payout.
Hmm.
If you stay healthy and avoid chronic disease, You stay out of the hospital.
Right.
By staying out of the hospital, you are personally generating multi-billion-dollar systemic savings for the single-payer apparatus.
Because they don't have to pay for your open heart surgery.
Exactly. The system is simply taking a portion of those exact savings you generated and paying it back to you as a literal dividend for your personal responsibility.
It is financializing wellness.
It turns your health into an income stream.
Okay, you are essentially paid a dividend from the macro savings you help generate. That is a highly compelling way to reframe the nanny state argument.
It shifts it from a penalty to a reward.
You are not being monitored for control. You are being audited for your payout.
Precisely.
And the text also talks about scaling this health infrastructure, so absolutely everyone has access to the tools needed to earn those dividends, right?
Because it has to be equitable.
Yeah, it mentions national lifestyle campaigns aimed at democratizing health through technology.
Yes, because it is obviously unfair to demand people meet fitness benchmarks if they cannot afford a gym membership or a personal trainer.
Right. If only the rich can get the health dividends.
Exactly. So the author envisions virtual AI-driven yoga teachers, personalized digital nutritionists, and national mindfulness initiatives.
All deployed directly into every single home via smart devices.
Physical movement and mental well-being become cultural staples, heavily subsidized or entirely free.
Because, again, the cheapest hospital bed in the world is the one that stays empty.
It is vastly cheaper to give everyone a free AI yoga subscription than to pay for one open-heart surgery.
But let's look at the reality of human existence for a second.
It's messy.
It's very messy. Even with free AI yoga in every living room, even with perfectly diverse gut microbiomes and a total ban on processed sugar, people are still physical beings.
Accidents happen.
Right. People are still going to fall off ladders and break their arms. People are still going to get appendicitis or develop genetic cancers.
You cannot prevent every accident or genetic reality through sheer willpower and kale.
So how does the author propose fixing the actual physical delivery of medicine when the preventative layer fails? How do we fix the hospitals?
This is where we move into what the author calls the delivery layers.
Delivery layers.
He insists on a philosophy of graduated complexity. He segments physical care into distinct, non-overlapping, heavily structured tiers.
What's the goal of segmenting it like that?
The goal here is to avoid the exact administrative confusion, patient misdirection, and financial bloat that Mark Cuban critiques in the current system.
Okay, so the foundation of this physical care is layer 1, or basic care. The text describes this as digital-first triage coupled with highly localized neighborhood clinics.
This is for your minor illnesses.
Right, your stitches, your routine diagnostics, maybe a persistent cough.
The central idea of layer 1 is interception.
Interception.
You want to intercept the vast majority of daily medical needs at the lowest possible cost level, right in the patient's neighborhood or literally on their phone.
You are actively preventing people from wandering into highly expensive, fully staffed emergency rooms just because they have a sinus infection and their primary care doctor is booked out for 3 weeks.
Because an ER visit for a sinus infection costs the system thousands of dollars.
Whereas a digital triage call and a quick trip to a neighborhood nurse practitioner clinic cost maybe $50.
Exactly. You filter the low complexity cases out immediately. Then you have layers 2 and 3.
The specialized stuff.
Right. Moving up to the ultra-specialized care. Complex surgeries, rare oncology, advanced neurology.
The text refers to these as scaled regional networks of excellence.
And this brings up a highly specific and really illuminating example from the source material regarding MRI machines.
Ah, yes, the MRI problem. I loved this part of the text because it makes the invisible economic forces so visible.
It really does.
It is a perfect distillation of the author's critique of how capitalism corrupts local healthcare delivery.
Let's look at the status quo in a mid-size American city.
Okay, picture this. You might have 2 competing hospital networks in the exact same zip code. To outmarket each other and attract wealthy patients with good insurance, they engage in a literal medical arms race.
Hospital A buys a state-of-the-art multi-million-dollar 3D MRI machine.
So Hospital B, right across the street, immediately feels they have to go out and buy an identical multi-million-dollar MRI machine.
Just so they can put up a billboard on the highway saying, we also have the newest 3D MRI technology.
And as a patient driving down that highway, you have to stop and think, why on earth is a hospital advertising a diagnostic machine to me like it is a new iPhone?
Exactly. I don't know if I need an MRI. I am not a doctor.
But they are operating as profit-seeking businesses competing for market share.
Exactly. But from a systemic, macroeconomic perspective, that arms race is disastrous.
Because of the costs.
Yes, those MRI machines are incredibly expensive to purchase and maintain. And to pay them off, both hospitals are now heavily financially incentivized to order more MRI scans.
There's a term for this, right?
Yes. This is often referred to in health economics as Romer's Law. A built bed is a filled bed.
A built bed is a filled bed, meaning if they build it, they will find a way to use it.
If a hospital has the capacity, they will find a way to use it to generate revenue. They subtly encourage their doctors to order MRIs for minor joint pain that might only require physical therapy.
Which drives up costs across the board. The patient and the entire insurance pool ultimately pays for that redundant machine and that highway marketing budget.
So the author's structural solution is to completely eliminate the marketing budget and the redundancy.
Sure.
In his layered system, advanced technology and specialized talent are distributed logically, based purely on regional population data and demographic math.
Oh, so it's strictly mathematical.
If you have a region of 500,000 people and statistical health data shows that a population of that size only needs 3 specialized MRI machines to meet demand efficiently without massive wait times.
Then the single-payer system only funds 3 machines for that region.
Exactly. They're placed in the layer 2 or layer 3 hubs. You strip out the local competition, you strip out the redundancy, and you just provide the medical service based on mathematical need.
You do not let hospitals buy toys just to stroke their egos? Exactly.
It is a ruthless application of efficiency. But the efficiency does not stop at the hospital doors. Because we have fixed the hospitals, we have prevented the metabolic diseases. But what happens when you actually need a pharmaceutical intervention?
What about the infamous $10,000 pill?
Right. This is a critical component of the blueprint, siloing R&D. The author demands a total structural segregation of pharmaceutical and medical device research and development from the day-to-day delivery of healthcare.
Because right now, those things are incredibly tangled up in a very messy knot.
Yeah, the pharmaceutical companies constantly defend their pricing. They say, look, we have to charge $10,000 for this life-saving pill because we spent $2 billion developing it.
And for every successful drug, we have 99 experiments that fail.
Mm-hmm.
You are paying for the failures.
And to be fair, the text acknowledges that R&D is astronomically expensive and scientifically difficult.
Innovation requires massive capital.
But it highlights a profound perverse incentive in the current setup. When you bundle the immense financial risk of R&D with the final retail price of the pill at the pharmacy counter, you are not just paying for the pure science.
No, you are paying for massive corporate administrative costs.
You are paying out shareholder dividends.
And perhaps most egregiously, you're paying for billions of dollars in television advertising.
Direct-to-consumer advertising.
Ask your doctor if this pill is right for you. We have all seen the commercials with people running through fields of daisies while a voiceover lists 30 terrifying side effects.
The United States is one of the only countries in the world that even allows direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising.
And the single-payer system, under the current model, is implicitly paying for those commercials through inflated drug prices.
So the author proposes funding R&D entirely differently. He suggests pulling it out of the private retail market and funding it through distinct public-private trust structures.
Public-private trusts.
The immense financial risk of medical innovation is pooled and funded at a national or even global level.
This could look like massive innovation prizes, right? Where the government offers $1 billion to whichever lab cures a specific disease.
Or publicly funded clinical trials. But the key is that the R&D funding is completely separate from the retail pharmacy supply chain.
Okay, let's walk through this practically for a second.
Sure.
Let's say the public-private trust funds the research, the scientists do their brilliant work, and they find the cure. The new drug is developed and approved. What happens next? How does it get to my medicine cabinet without costing $10,000?
Then we return perfectly to Mark Cuban's model. Because the R&D was funded upfront by the trust, the actual recipe for the drug is now treated as a public good.
A public good.
The innovation is licensed out to private manufacturing streams on a completely transparent cost-plus basis.
So a manufacturing plant says it costs us exactly $12 in raw chemical materials and factory labor to physically produce this pill.
Exactly. You take that literal cost of raw materials and manufacturing, $12, you add a flat, transparent, legally mandated percentage for their operational profit.
Let's say a 15% markup.
Right. And that final number, $14, is the exact price The single-payer system pays.
Wow.
No massive marketing budgets to recoup, no television commercials to fund, no paying back the R&D losses at the pharmacy counter.
The science is funded generously on the front end, but the delivery of the physical pill is commoditized on the back end.
So the $10,000 pill truly becomes a $14 pill.
It is brilliant in its structural simplicity. You protect the innovation while destroying the price gouging.
It is elegant. But this is where the author's mega-project mindset really expands.
How much bigger can it get?
Well, because he is not satisfied with just fixing the pills in the hospitals.
Yeah.
He argues that fixing pills in hospitals is still just treating the physical symptoms of a deeper rot.
A deeper rot.
The author makes a profound sociological argument. A healthcare system cannot possibly be healthy if the society living within it is profoundly sick.
Yes, this moves us into a fascinating area of the text. Re-engineering the social fabric.
It's all connected.
The text argues that the root cause of so much systemic inflammation, autoimmune disorders, and chronic disease is actually the downstream physiological effect of anxiety-inducing realities.
It is the grinding daily stress of modern life, manifesting as physical illness in our bodies.
And to fix this, the author looks across the globe. He points specifically to Singapore for inspiration.
Singapore is famous among urban planners for its highly managed public housing and social planning strategies.
And the author borrows a specific, deeply cultural concept from them, proposing we import it to the U.S.
The three-generation household incentive.
I found this specific policy proposal incredibly intriguing. It is such a massive departure from American individualism.
Totally counter to it.
The author proposes actively modifying our tax codes, our zoning laws, and our housing policies to heavily incentivize grandparents, adult parents, and children to all live together under one single roof.
Which, as you said, is a massive departure from the highly atomized nuclear family model that dominates the West.
Where kids turn 18 and leave, and grandparents are eventually moved into separate care facilities.
But let's look at the ripple effects, the compounding macroeconomic savings outlined in the text if we shift back to multi-generational living.
Right. Let's think about what causes chronic grinding stress for a young working family today. The biggest stressor is childcare.
The costs are astronomical.
You have dual-income parents working all day just to hand their entire paycheck over to a daycare center.
And on the flip side, what causes massive stress and financial ruin for those same parents 20 years later?
The deep isolation and terrifying cost of eldercare.
Nursing homes can run tens of thousands of dollars a month, draining generational wealth instantly.
When you structurally incentivize multi-generational living, perhaps by offering massive tax credits for building an attached accessory dwelling unit,
Or abolishing restrictive single-family zoning laws to allow for larger shared homes.
you naturally diffuse those specific economic anxieties. The grandparents provide built-in, trusted, loving childcare for the kids.
And the adult children provide built-in, dignified elder care for the aging parents.
By doing this, you drastically reduce the national expenditures on outsourced commercial care facilities.
You essentially keep that labor and that money inside the family unit.
And it builds deep emotional support structures. It stabilizes housing security because you have multiple adults contributing to a single mortgage.
Making them far more resilient against bank-manufactured financial crises.
The text even mentions something as simple as pooling resources for healthy home-cooked food.
It is a lot harder to rely on a drive-through for dinner when you have 3 generations sharing a kitchen, a massive grocery budget, and someone is actually home at 4 p.m. to start cooking.
And that concept of food access leads right into the author's strategy for what he calls targeted food security.
In this re-engineered society, the traditional, often restrictive and punitive welfare system is replaced by robust, universal healthy food programs.
The premise here is incredibly bold, but logically sound. If every single zip code in the country has equal access to nutritious, non-toxic food,
Meaning no more urban food deserts, where the only place to buy groceries is a gas station.
right, and equal access to high-quality, non-segregated public education, the baseline stress levels of the entire population plunge.
And when chronic stress plunges, cortisol levels drop.
And when cortisol drops,
The systemic inflammation that triggers heart disease, autoimmune disorders, and metabolic syndrome plunges with it. The author is essentially prescribing social equality as a preventative medical treatment.
now, You might be listening to this and thinking, okay, this all sounds like an incredible utopian dream.
AI yoga in the living room, multi-generational familial harmony, $14 miracle drugs.
No medical bills ever again. But has anyone actually tried pieces of this? Does any of this actually work in the messy real world?
That is exactly where the author goes next, which I really appreciate. He doesn't just theorize, he audits
He looks at what's already out there.
to argue that his specific, layered vision of single payer is the best path forward. He insists on a candid, unromanticized critique here of existing global universal systems.
He looks at where current iterations around the world fall short to prove why his architecture is necessary.
It is a great reality check. Let's start with the United Kingdom and their National Health Service, the NHS.
The text refers to their model as the peril of underfunded monoliths.
The NHS is highly equitable in theory. Everyone gets care, free at the point of service.
Hmm.
But the author identifies a fatal structural flaw in its architecture. It lacks agility and is systemically, chronically underfunded.
Why is that?
Because the UK government acts as both the payer of the care and the employer or owner of the hospitals.
Right, the doctors literally work for the government. The government owns the brick and mortar buildings.
They are a monopsony, the only buyer of healthcare, but they also act almost like a monopoly provider.
And that monolithic top-down structure creates severe operational bottlenecks.
Because the infrastructure budget is tied directly to the political budget of the ruling party, capital expenditures are often squeezed.
This leads to crumbling physical infrastructure, outdated technology, and the infamous multi-year-long wait times for Layer 2 and Layer 3 specialized care.
So how does the author's blueprint solve the UK's monolith problem?
He argues that a superior system strictly separates the payer from the provider.
Okay, so split them up.
The government should absolutely fund the care entirely that guarantees the equity and the monopsony leverage, but the actual physical delivery of care should be autonomous.
Let independent, nonprofit, or public benefit clinics and clinicians operate with operational freedom.
Let them compete, not on marketing budgets or MRI arms races, but on the pure quality of their health outcomes and patient satisfaction.
Okay, what about Canada?
Canada.
In American political debates, Canada is the classic single-payer system everyone points to, either as a shining beacon or a cautionary tale.
The text calls the Canadian model the wait time dilemma and missing foundations.
Canada is very good at controlling macro costs by setting strict, inflexible global budgets for their hospitals. They say, here is your money for the year, make it work.
But its primary failure, according to the author's framework, is that it totally ignores Layer 1.
Right, the foundation.
It ignores the foundational wellness and lifestyle prevention layer we discussed earlier.
It essentially waits until people are physically broken to engage with them.
And because the hospital budgets are strictly capped, when too many people get sick from preventable lifestyle diseases, the system simply cannot absorb the volume.
The result is rationing. You get those painful, highly publicized wait times for elective and specialized surgeries, like hip replacements or hernia repairs.
Exactly. Furthermore, the Canadian system traditionally fragments care in a way that makes no logical sense.
How so?
It covers the hospital visit perfectly, but historically it omits prescription drugs, dental care, and vision from the core universal umbrella.
Which is insane from a preventative systems perspective.
Totally insane. If a low-income patient cannot afford their generic blood pressure medication because drugs aren't covered, they are eventually going to end up in the emergency room with a massive stroke.
And treating that stroke costs the universal system infinitely more than the pills would have.
The author's reform for Canada is straightforward. Integrate prescription drugs under a single national formulary using Mark Cuban's cost-plus pricing, and aggressively fund the wellness credit layer.
Stop the chronic metabolic issues before they clog up the surgical queues and blow out the global budgets.
Finally, the text looks at Taiwan, their national health insurance, or NHI.
The author highlights Taiwan as the closest existing success story to his ultimate vision.
The absolute marvel of Taiwan is its incredible, almost unbelievable administrative efficiency.
The text notes that Taiwan operates its entire national health system with administrative costs of less than 2%.
Less than 2%.
Compare that to the U.S. private sector, which hovers around 12 to 15% just in administrative overhead.
Just armies of billers and coders fighting with armies of insurance adjusters.
Exactly. And how do they achieve that sub 2% efficiency? through a brilliant piece of technology, a single national smart card system.
Every single citizen in Taiwan has a physical card containing their entire medical history.
Let's walk through how this actually feels for a patient.
Yeah.
You walk into a clinic in Taipei. You hand them your card.
They swipe it or tap it, and instantly the doctor sees your entire history.
They see the exact blood test you had 3 days ago at a totally different clinic. They see your allergies, your prescriptions.
And because they see that blood test from 3 days ago, they don't order a redundant one.
It eliminates duplicate testing instantly.
Furthermore, it crushes administrative friction. When the doctor is done, the billing is processed to the single payer essentially in milliseconds digitally.
There's no coding war.
But even Taiwan's remarkably efficient system has a critical flaw, which the text points out.
Doctor burnout.
Yes. Because the national fee schedules, what the doctors get paid per visit, are kept quite low to control costs. And because patient access is so incredibly easy and cheap, you get a massive volume of patients coming in for trivial matters.
It creates a moral hazard. Doctors end up seeing dozens, sometimes up to 100 patients a day for minor colds, paper cuts, or just seeking reassurance.
They are exhausted.
The author's reform here is to introduce his layered basic care structure.
If Taiwan implemented that digital-first triage at Layer 1, forcing minor issues to be handled by an AI chatbot or a quick telehealth nurse combined with the financial wellness incentives, they could filter out millions of unnecessary physical visits.
Let the highly trained doctors focus their finite time and energy on the complex cases that actually need them.
This global tour raises the ultimate overarching question.
The big one.
After dissecting Mark Cuban's bottom-up capitalism, proposing an aggressive war on corporate food, redesigning the American family housing unit, and ruthlessly critiquing the UK, Canada, and Taiwan, what is the final conclusion of this massive systemic thought experiment?
We have arrived at the verdict. The author's concluding thesis is incredibly powerful. Maintaining the status quo in the United States is not just mathematically expensive, it is a profound, unsustainable tax on human flourishing.
He argues that we have to fundamentally redefine what the term single payer actually means in the public consciousness.
When it is designed correctly, with a foundational war on toxic food, real, tangible financial dividends paid out for personal wellness, a multi-generational social safety net, and strictly delineated efficient layers of care, it completely transcends traditional political labels.
The text explicitly states this is not a socialist overreach. It solves the central paradox of modern healthcare.
By wielding the immense consolidated power of a single payer, you are actually enacting the ultimate expression of direct contracting and free market transparency.
You are taking 340 million fractured, powerless consumers and converting them into a single, unstoppable purchasing block.
You starve the opaque conglomerates of their hidden margins.
You crush the administrative bloat that provides zero medical value.
And crucially, you take those immense multi-billion-dollar systemic savings and you return them directly back to the people who actually earn them by staying well.
It is a brilliant synthesis of market efficiency and collective national responsibility.
It is a breathtaking vision of what is structurally possible when you stop patching the leaky pipe and decide to redesign the plumbing.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive today, but before we go, we want to leave you with a final lingering thought.
Something for you to mull over that builds on everything we have just unpacked.
Consider the massive geopolitical implications of this text.
If a single nation actually successfully executes this blueprint, if they truly redefine national infrastructure to legally include the human gut microbiome,
If they successfully integrate multi-generational housing to solve the care crisis.
and if they totally eliminate the trillion-dollar economic drag of the sick care economy, what happens to that nation on the global stage?
Would the resulting explosion in baseline human productivity, the compounding mental clarity of a stress-free population, and the total permanent elimination of medical debt create an untouchable economic superpower?
A superpower that other nations, still stubbornly clinging to fragmented, reactive, profit-driven sick care economies, could simply never hope to compete with.
It is a profound question. It makes you look at a confusing medical bill or even just a brightly colored box of ultra-processed food in the grocery aisle in a completely different light.
It makes you question the invisible systems we just accept as normal.
We encourage you to read the labels on your food, to think critically about the true hidden costs of convenience, and to imagine what a system actually designed for human flourishing might look like. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.